A crack splitting across a child's bedroom wall. A centuries-old farmhouse held upright by scaffolding. A tremor in the middle of the night, in a country that isn't supposed to have earthquakes. Welcome to Groningen, in the far north of the Netherlands. Beneath these quiet fields sits one of the biggest natural gas reserves ever discovered. A jackpot so enormous, it helped bankroll an entire welfare state. But it isn't what it looked like on the balance sheet. Because here's the uncomfortable math. The Dutch state earned roughly 363 billion euros from this field. The people living on top of it got more than 1,600 earthquakes, hundreds of thousands of damage claims, and a fight for justice that still isn't over. And the strangest part? The shaking didn't stop when the gas did. By the end of this video, you'll understand how Groningen went from the richest gas field in Europe to one of the biggest political scandals in modern Dutch history, and what happens when state interest, corporate power, and ordinary people's homes all collide under one patch of farmland. First, the basics. It's 1959, near a village called Slochteren. A drilling rig strikes gas. And at first, almost nobody grasps what they found. The truth takes years to sink in. This is the largest natural gas field in the world at the time of its discovery. Around 2,800 billion cubic meters, spread under roughly 900 square kilometers of farmland. Production starts in 1963, and the Netherlands rewires itself at record speed. Within a decade, nearly every Dutch home is cooking and heating on natural gas. Industry expands. Exports boom. In 1976 alone, the field pumps out 88 billion cubic meters, its all-time peak. By the mid-1980s, gas is bringing in around 11 billion euros a year, roughly 5% of the entire Dutch economy. A later parliamentary inquiry would describe Groningen gas as the financial foundation of the Dutch welfare state. So, who's running this money machine? A construction the Dutch literally call the gas building. The state on one side, Shell and ExxonMobil on the other, drilling through their joint venture, the NAM. And buried inside that construction is the design flaw that everything else in this story flows from. The entire system was built to squeeze maximum value out of the field. Safety, health, the homes above the gas, those were never equal partners at the table. Remember that, because the scandal isn't just that mistakes were made later. It's that the system rewarded revenue first, by design. Then the ground started talking back. 1991, the first recorded earthquake in the Groningen field. 1993, researchers officially confirmed the link. Gas extraction is causing the tremors. 2006, a magnitude 3.5 quake near Middelstum triggers more than 400 damage claims. And the national response? Essentially a shrug. Outside Groningen, barely anyone is paying attention. Inside Groningen, frustration boils over. And in 2009, residents found the Groninger Bodembeweging to fight for the people being harmed. Then comes the day everything changes. August 16, 2012, Huizinga, magnitude 3.6, the strongest induced earthquake ever recorded in the Netherlands. Cracks crawl through walls across the region, and Groningen stops being a technical debate. It becomes a human crisis. And now, the part that still makes Groningers furious. In early 2013, the state's own mining regulator issues a blunt warning: cut production as much and as fast as realistically possible. So, what does production do in 2013? It goes up to 54 billion cubic meters, one of the highest levels in years. The official justification? Security of supply. The parliamentary inquiry would later use a very different word for it: a smokescreen. The cuts did come, eventually, down to 42.5 billion cubic meters in 2014. capped at $27 billion in 2015. And then, in March 2018, the political dam finally breaks. The Dutch government announces that extraction must end as soon as possible because the safety of residents now comes first. After half a century, the question is no longer how to keep Groningen going, it's how to shut it down. But step back for a second, because while politicians changed course, people's lives stayed stuck. By early 2023, more than 267,000 damage claims had been filed. Thousands of homes still had no verdict on whether they were even safe, and almost 12,000 were waiting for reinforcement. People reported cracks, waited for inspections, watched repairs fail, then reported new damage on top of old damage. Some homes were demolished outright. In 2021, the National Ombudsman called the situation a national crisis. Thousands of people whose lives had been put on hold, and the damage went far beyond brickwork. Residents were living with chronic stress, anxiety, and health problems. Researchers at the University of Groningen even linked that stress to an estimated 16 premature deaths every year in one of the richest countries on Earth. So the country reached for its heaviest weapon. In March 2019, Parliament voted unanimously for a full parliamentary inquiry, and in February 2023, the verdict landed in language that was nothing short of devastating. The numbers first. Roughly 363 billion euros for the Dutch treasury, about 66 billion in profits for Shell and ExxonMobil's shareholders. And of all that money, barely 1% ever landed in the province itself. Then came the conclusion. The interests of Groningen's residents had been structurally ignored, with disastrous consequences. The committee's final phrase became famous overnight. The Netherlands owes Groningen a debt of honor. 2 months later, Prime Minister Mark Rutte stood in the village of Garmerwolde and apologized, cap in hand in his own words. Hold on to that phrase, debt of honor, because we're about to find out what it's actually worth. Now, shutting the field down was never as simple as turning off a tap. The entire Dutch gas system, and parts of Belgium, Germany, and France, was built around Groningen's specific type of gas. So the government built nitrogen plants to convert imports, helped industry switch over, and doubled the country's LNG import capacity after the 2022 energy crisis, from 117 to 234 terawatt-hours a year. Regular production ended on October 1, 2023. In April 2024, the Senate passed the law sealing the field shut, and that October, the extraction ban came into force, permanently. So, that debt of honor, what did repaying it actually look like? Repairs got simpler. From late 2023, damage up to 60,000 euros could be fixed without residents having to prove the exact cause of every single crack. And the first households used that route in 2024. Fixed compensation for smaller damage was doubled to 10,000 euros, with up to 10,000 extra for addresses that had been shortchanged before. And then the big one. Nieuw begin, Groning's dialect for new beginning. A generation-long recovery plan, 50 measures, a massive home insulation drive, 500 million euros up front for the social agenda, 250 million for the economic one, and then 100 million per year for 30 years for each, starting in 2026. For the first time, Groningen wasn't being treated as a damage file. It was being treated as a regional injustice. So is that the happy ending? Not quite. There are 3 twists. Twist 1. The earthquakes didn't stop. Even with the taps closed, pressure deep inside the depleted field is still settling. and experts warn the tremors could keep coming for years. No more extraction never meant no more shaking. Twist 2. The bill is still being fought over. In February 2024, Dutch media revealed that Shell and ExxonMobil's joint venture had dragged the state into arbitration over the costs of the early closure. By late 2024, ExxonMobil escalated, invoking the Energy Charter Treaty in a potential multi-billion euro claim. And those cases were still grinding on into 2026. So picture the split screen, residents waiting for their homes to be fixed, while the state and two oil giants argue over who owes whom. Twist 3. The politics never died. Critics say the Netherlands switched off one of Europe's largest domestic gas sources in the middle of an energy crisis, leaving the country more dependent on imports, including, uncomfortably, LNG from Russia. On the right, Forum for Democracy wants the field reopened, and JA21 wants it kept on standby as a strategic reserve. The gas is gone. The argument isn't. Zoom out one last time, because Groningen fits a much bigger European story. Since the 2022 energy shock, governments across the continent have been racing away from fossil dependence, diversifying supply, accelerating wind and solar, and tying climate policy to security through the Green Deal. Groningen is what the end of the gas age looks like up close. Necessary, expensive, and painful for the people standing closest to it. In the end, Groningen isn't really a story about gas. It's a story about what a country decides to value, what it's willing to ignore, and how long a wealthy nation can sit on a bill piling up under its own feet. The field is closed. The damage, the distrust, and the lawsuits are not. And it leaves Europe with a question far bigger than one Dutch province. How do you enjoy the wealth under the ground without breaking the people who live on top of it? That's the story of Groningen. Let us know what you think in the comments. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.